Hi, everyone.
everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Can We Discuss with Yara and Petra.
Today we have our very first male guest.
Yes. Happy to be here, ladies and gentlemen.
We have our dear friend Joey Chaaya, who is here to discuss with us today his journey from moving from the safety net of being in corporate to moving and to becoming an entrepreneur in Dubai and starting his business, PetBae.
That's right. Very, very
Joey, we're so
exciting.
excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. I know we were talking about doing this for a while, but I'm glad we're actually here. So
I
thanks
know,
for
I know.
inviting me.
Of course. I think Yara teased a little bit about your journey already. So what we really want to dive into today is your journey moving from corporate to becoming a founder and founding your own application and business in Dubai. We want to get into all of the nitty-gritty details and really be able to give as much value to the readers from your journey because we know that it's been an interesting one, tough at times, but you made it to a point where now it's a very successful business. So kudos to you. So tell us, moving from corporate, what was that moment where you felt like this is the right time for me to take this step and kind of leave, like Yara said, the safety net behind and start my own thing?
Yeah, it's such a good question, to be honest, because how it happened was a bit like random in the sense that I already knew that something like PetBay existed in the US, but I knew also that it just didn't exist here. So there was that part. I was always obsessed with pets growing up. Like I've had multiple pets and family pets, growing up. So not only did I have that passion, but obviously the experience and understanding what they needed, especially here in the Middle East, where you might not think that people think about that stuff as much as they do in the Western societies, for example, like the US, where there's definitely a more number of pets per household compared to here. But what I knew for sure is that for me to be able to do something that that I'm passionate about, enjoy what I'm doing, and to feel that fulfillment of actually, making people happy, changing the world to some degree, even though it was just a little shift, that was genuinely what I wanted and what gave me the sort of the energy, the motivation to leave my full-time job safety net and yeah, do this full time. It wasn't an easy decision. I can talk about that a lot more, So in the end, I think people have this unconscious fear, and it's totally unconscious because I didn't even realize how sort of unhappy I was with my job at the time until I actually left, And so I guess that it doesn't have to be unhappiness either. Like you could just be like better at something else, but not even know it,
Yeah.
right? And so that was actually one of the key things. I knew that I was very, very good at sales, and I've been in sales my entire life, like 14 years in sales. And I knew that I could sell something that would help people, and that's really what I wanted to do. So even like just sort of my standard operating sales procedure was very much aligned with trying to help people and not trying to screw them. I don't know
Yeah.
if I could actually say that, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to, that's just not like my style at all. Like ultimately, even if I was selling tissues, which I was doing at the time, I just made sure that the client was happy, that the quality
Yeah.
was there, that the service level was there. And so if I could bring that and bring that with a lot of energy into something that I actually love to sell, that's exactly what happened here. And so super passionate about pets, and I knew that this is a growing industry here in the UAE.
So you mentioned that this is a growing industry in the UAE. I live in the US, obviously. Our listeners hopefully know that. But basically, I see how much of a big industry, like anything pets here, will literally fly off the shelves, you know?
Exactly.
It's huge. خلص يعني their pets are their kids. عن
Hmm.
جد. Like literally, even like bumper stickers on cars, like I'm a fur grandmama هيك اشياء يعني عرفت انه anything that's like pet related is very big in the US. So I'm very interested to understand like how it is in the UAE, especially يعني ما بعرف قديش this is relevant, but like especially like in certain countries or religions or cultures, like dogs specifically are not really like that welcome or that accepted, you know? So I'm interested to understand how it looks like in the UAE versus a market like the US?
Yes, yes. A lot of our research is actually based off the US, and understanding, what the ratio is with like dog food sales or pet food sales in the US versus the ratio for pet sitting services or pet services in general, right? We had to pick up on that data to understand the market over here, to understand, because in the end, there wasn't a lot of data on pet sitting, right?
Yeah.
We're pretty much the first to do it here. So
Yeah.
we had to base it on various different factors like population metrics, number of pets per household over here. But UAE is a bit of a wild card, to be honest, because in my opinion, it's like a mini US. Like the expat community is 90%, and just the pet population alone has almost doubled from COVID until now, right? So COVID actually
Wow.
helped quite a lot with pet ownership.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
because I'm not sure the psychology behind it, but I'm assuming, people would go out less, and so they try to make their homes more
Yeah,
entertaining, and so
yeah,
they would
yeah,
get more
yeah.
pets.
Yeah, yeah. You
So
need
yeah, I
more
think
of
it's
a
around along those lines. But yeah, look, it's just one of those things. Apart from the research and sort of benchmarking the US to a certain degree, we used a lot of our own proprietary data, which is why it was important to actually start when we started. Even though we didn't have all the resources and we
Yeah.
created a website that was just basic functionality, simply because we needed to understand. So we did that for 1 year, then we used our own proprietary data along with the Euromonitor reports for the population metrics, and we were able to extrapolate a number where we can actually scale this thing up. In the US, there is a model that is very, very similar to PetBae, and they recently sold for 2.3 billion. This was November of last year.
That's insane.
$2.3 billion, and it was at a 60% premium to their stock price at the time, which is very, very interesting. Now, it's interesting because in the US, this market's definitely saturated, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the actual CAGR, which is the compounding annual growth rate in the US, is around 5%, while our CAGR over here is 13%. So even though there's a less number of households with pets over here, there are more transactions simply because we are a very app sort of
We're
driven
very app
society.
driven. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we have a lot more transactions per person in general when you're looking about app transactions, but then less for sure bookings in the pets because there's less pets, right? But all of these combined made it very, very decent, a very decent opportunity for us. And I'm not saying 2.3 billion, but definitely in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
That's
Wow.
amazing. That's amazing. And wait,
That
I have a question for Joey. So now, where you stand today with PetBae, how has the industry changed? Because I've known about PetBae ever since the start of it, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen the different versions of PetBae that came about and the additional services that you've added within the website, within the app itself, right?
Yes. Yes.
How has the market shifted for you to be able to start offering all of these services?
Yeah, look, it's a really, really important question. I think it is the basis of our business model succeeding here because there were issues, right? I have to say, for me, to be able to not only start a startup, but to one that can actually have an impact, it was important that when I launched these services, that I was solving an issue, solving a problem. Now,
yeah.
there is a problem here with overcrowding, right? So when you go to a lot of these facilities, I'm not going to talk about all of them because some of them are good, but the vast majority of these places are usually handled by people that are overworked and underpaid,
Yeah.
right? That
And they're
is,
expensive. And the UAE, they're extremely expensive, right? Compared to.
yeah, super expensive in the UAE. So there were, I'll tell you what the main issues were. Overcrowding was one. Overcrowding would cause anxiety in pets that didn't have it.
Okay.
Older pets, cats, and say disabled pets were struggling to find options at the time and would have to be, pretty much isolated in one of these facilities, where in reality, you know for sure that this wasn't an ideal situation for them, right? And so, apart from that, very, very expensive also. A lot of these places are over 120, 130 dirhams per night, where they're going to be kind of put into a caged environment. And again, this is not all the places, but the vast majority of them will be put into a caged environment. They couldn't roam free. They couldn't be in an environment that is familiar to them, like a home environment. So with our services, not only did we say that, yeah, there are 4 categories of pets that really, really require our service and do not have another option today, which are all cats, disabled pets, older pets, and pets with anxiety, right? But it is very, very, very important that everyone can have that option. It's just, why would you rather, I'll ask you a question. Would you rather your pet be looked after by someone who's looking after 20 odd pets that are overworked and underpaid, or you'll have a dedicated pet sitter with with one that has a pet or one that doesn't? You can choose, right? And you can choose on a filter basis, so that you're literally speaking to someone that has 14 years of experience looking after their own pet. So it just made sense that I connect people that were looking for that service with those individuals.
At least in the UAE, because a lot of people travel as well. People love their pets as if they love their children. No matter where you are in the world, when you have a pet, whether it's a dog, it's a cat, it's whatever, you're absolutely obsessed with that pet. And it becomes a part of your family. But unfortunately, because it's a huge expat community here, a lot of the times, a lot of people are traveling. And they want to make sure, whether it's for work or pleasure or whatever, they want to make sure that their pet can either stay at home and somebody would be visiting them to feed them, to pet sit, to whatever, or to be able to put their pet with a trusted person, right? Because with PetBae, we have to create our profiles and we have to include why we would be a good sitter or a good walker or whatever it is, right? So have you seen, is there a specific kind of fluctuation when it comes to this?
Yeah, well, the gig economy in the UAE is something that's picking up a lot, right? This is a very good question, because our vetting process is what makes and breaks our business. Selecting the right people and approving them and verifying them with regards to the number of experience they have, the fact that they currently own pets or have owned pets in previously, making sure that the images that they put, images of their house, the images that they put with other pets, is clear and indication of their responsibility and experience. So we make sure to look at all of these things before we approve them. And just to give you an example, we've had near 12,000 signups since we started just for pet sitting, and we've only approved around 2,000, and about 500 of them are getting all the bookings. So
Wow.
yeah, like it's just one of these things there where it's a proven thing, right? Where like 80% of all of my revenue comes from 20% of the supply. Now, I do not want to isolate or neglect the people that didn't receive bookings. It's very important that they do, especially if they were approved. So that's something that we're working on right now, just to sort of redirect it with the tech to make sure that these people also get bookings. But we are actually launching a really cool feature now, which is our badges. So basically, it's a
Nice.
tier structure, so that in case a pet sitter reaches 5 bookings, they'll get a badge, 10 bookings,
Nice.
and then the last badge is a super sitter badge. So that would
That's
be,
cute.
it's not out yet, but it should be out soon. Teaser,
Teaser exclusive content right here.
exclusive, only for y'alls.
Yeah. That's super interesting. And I think, like you said, like the vetting process is super, super important. And it's very interesting to see you looking at trends from the US and understanding like how it resonates in the Middle East versus in the US. And now obviously it's operating, so you can see the differences of from what you've built. But I kind of want to take us back a little bit to the beginning of PetBae, just to talk about the actual startup process, like you actually, kicking it off and getting on your feet. I want to talk about something very specific that a lot of people always ask about whenever, or it's the first thing they'll think about naturally, Yane, when they want to start something, which is funding. Funding, Yana, I know in the States there's a lot of different programs that you can utilize with the government. I want to understand in the UAE, how does that look like? Obviously, there was investment, بركة personal minnak. I want to try to understand, like, for newbies who are coming in, like, what was your journey and what would you advise for someone going into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a full-time job, and I had the full-time job for a while before I actually quit. So I was doing PetBae in parallel for quite some time, and that, to be very honest with you, was by far the most difficult thing. It was being able to have the energy after, like, a 10-hour day, coming back home and spending another 3 hours just with regards to research, figuring things out, managing the tech, trying to find the right people who are going to help me out with this. So in the end, I started this with my best friend, so having that support is very important. Having a co-founder is of extreme importance, in my opinion. It is a lonely journey if you're going to do this alone. You need to bounce ideas off each other, someone to kind of check, correct, challenge you when where it needs to be challenged. So the first part is really the most difficult, is being able to actually work two jobs when you can't really, when in reality you don't really have the time for it or the energy. But it's important that
Exactly.
you kind of break through that barrier. It took me about 6 months, no joke, to be able to actually feel okay about coming home and working those extra hours. So that was the first step. The second step is money, right? So money is always going to be an issue with startup. I mean, you can go ahead and raise it off the get-go. That's not what we did. We bootstrapped it in the beginning, so we used our own money for
Okay.
a couple of reasons. One, it kind of puts us, in a it drives you exactly.
Make sure it works.
100%. So it drove us, and we were able to sort of build a lot of value that way, especially because we
Yeah.
have our own like money on the line.
Neither me.
Yeah, like this, and then the thing is being able to do all of this with a little amount of money, but still get a quality product out of that. So we had to go to India, and not just anywhere in India. Like we had to go to the south of India, to the most rural place you can find that had some tech court, where we approached the company over there, and we were.
Find that place.
Yeah, trust me, one thing led to another. A lot of research was involved. Everything was just too expensive for us. So we just had to move on to the next one until we found something that was affordable enough to build a website. And we ended up building our initial website for like 20K dirham. No joke. The initial website
Wow.
cost me 20,000 dirhams only. So 10K,
Wow.
10K, me and my business partner at the time. So yeah, we managed to get something. And before we even decided to get the license and everything, we wanted to test it out. So we actually threw it into the market unregulated just to see the responses. And we had a very good response. So we immediately went and actually got the license and got geared up for the scaling.
How long before PetBay was actually making a substantial amount of money that you were able to quit your corporate job?
Yeah, so it was about 1 year. PetBay technically, you could say it launched in the beginning of 2022. And I managed to raise money from family and friends at the end of 2022. So at the end of 2022 is when I quit my job, and I had again, raised enough money to pay myself a small salary. And that's something I would want to touch up on, is that you can't really be entitled to a salary if you're a co-founder. I mean, yeah, you can pay yourself a little bit, but you're essentially taking money from the business and money that can, grow the business. So it's a bit counterproductive, you could say. And again, I understand it's difficult. You need a salary, you need to live. You can't really depend on your savings if there are any in the first place. So
Yeah.
you really have to go and think, ahead, in the sense that knowing that this is going to be hard, truly understanding that this is something that you took a leap of faith doing so that the returns can come later. I know that I'm in a position and I'm doing this simply because I do want to retire early, and I want to do that by helping as many people as possible. Literally, that is the motivation. And I've had people call me, talk to me about how they weren't able to travel before PetBay. They were literally their pet parents, because like you said,
Wow.
they have their children. Well, they look at them as their own children, and a lot of
Yeah.
them haven't literally traveled from the most, I would say, the easiest place in the world where you can travel from, the UAE, Dubai. And they weren't able to travel because their pets were either anxious or too old, and they just didn't have an option, literally. So being able to actually make that difference in someone's life was amazing. Not only the person's life, but the pet's life, of course. So them to have like some, really focused care, because that's what we do. We like to focus, and we like to walk people through the journey, even though that part might not be as scalable as you think, but it's still super important for us that people feel comfortable, safe. And so that's something that we're not even like sort of discounting in any way possible, shape, or
Yeah.
form. We want to make sure that not only the vetting process is done extremely properly, so time and effort is spent there, but also walking people through the customer journey. What do we do? What kind of services do we offer? Why? How do we vet these pet sitters? Believe it or not, 95% of all bookings that pass through PetBay will go through a meet and greet before the booking gets done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, I
And we
like.
still get the booking. Why? Sometimes you would think that, oh, there's a lot of circumvention in marketplaces, which is true. There's I've even done it to some of the marketplaces that the big names, but the number is just too small for it to matter, right? That's one. Two, we can limit this, right? You can limit this with loyalty programs and the fact that PetBay is there, right, to help. And I'll give you an example. There was an occurrence where the pet sitter had an emergency situation during a booking, right? Let's just say the pet owner had booked this pet sitter using a community group or a Facebook group, right? For example, that's where they found them. They did the vetting themselves. And then this pet sitter had this emergency situation. What are they going to do miles away from home? How are they going to find another pet sitter to actually take on that booking? But with PetBay, we'll be able to find another pet sitter within the hour. Someone who lives right beside them, someone that I can introduce to them over the phone, get to know them a little bit so that there is, some dialogue, and then I'll transfer the booking over to them. It's very difficult for that to happen if there was no agency backing here, right? The
Yeah.
second thing is that the tier structure of the pet sitters. Ultimately, we've created these badges, for example, for credibility. This so it is in their benefit to keep the bookings on PetBay and to get that ranking higher because they're gonna just get more bookings that way. So it's all somewhat connected. And so what I've decided is that I want to give as much information as possible, even if it is to the point of giving the supply side's number, right? Which is the pet sitter's phone number digits, right? Because in the end, I know they're going to come back because of a few reasons. One, the product, and two, PetBay, what PetBay does in terms of the vetting and making sure that everything is done properly, safely, and responsibly.
You're in an industry that's very very like sensitive صح يعني so عن جد كتير مهم انه كل شيء عم تقوله right now, like all of these additional steps that you're taking. يعني some people might think انه ما بدها هالقد, but I think when you are in this space specifically, when you're messing around with someone's pet, like mom امزح عن جد جوي انا some of my friends بأمريكا like they'll ask me to pet sit, to like dog sit. And I'm like, I don't know. It's a lot of responsibility. يعني ما نحس حالي إنه أنا عم آخذ someone's child. Like someone's child, I'll feel more comfortable with than a dog because they can't tell me what they need, you know? So عن جد إنه I think it's very, very important that you're taking all of these additional steps to like make the end consumer feel, or like the pet owner feel comfortable with the services. لأنه it's very important for them to feel like their kids, their babies, essentially, are in good hands, that are in people's hands that care. And I think there's a very important like lesson here for entrepreneurs that like the small things matter, and like the small things all add up to really like give a better experience overall to the end consumer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Whether I'm talking about my own startup, you have to live and breathe this, right? Like I genuinely don't do anything else. I mean, I don't talk about anything else, and I like it, to be honest. I understand that I am in some degree the company, even from an investor point of view. Majority of the time they're investing in the people and not so much the startup, because you can have the best idea in the world, but you need to have people that you can rely on, people that are not really there for the 9 to 5. Oh, 5 p.m., I got to go home. It's just not that at all. And I make sure that, especially in our hiring process, to ask and to make that part very, very clear that it is very difficult. There is a lot of work, a lot of adjustments. We need to be super agile. Agility is like the key probably word out of my entire, journey, just simply because we had to do it like 100 times.
And there's so many
Yeah.
shifting pieces, right? There are so many moving parts. Like at one point, you're thinking about the investments, you're thinking about the funding,
Yeah.
you're thinking about bringing people onto the team that would be able to help and support. And like you said, agile humans that are able to juggle so many different hats at the
Yeah.
same time as well, right?
Yes.
So making sure that all of this is tied back together. I don't know how it is in the region, right? I'm always been a person that's wanted to start their own thing, but it's very scary. And I'm
Yeah,
sure it's very scary to a lot of people. You just put yourself in there and you were able to actually make something happen out of it, and something that's bigger than just you and your co-founder and the team,
yeah,
something that really supports your end users. And when I say end user, I mean the pets themselves
correct.
as well as the pet parents.
Yeah,
But you were able to do something that is very, very difficult. And thinking about what the user wants, what are their specific needs, and how you can cater to them. And
exactly.
I think businesses succeed because of this. If they don't do this at the beginning, that's where they fail from the get-go, right?
Exactly, yeah. You know, like, so it's really, really important that you mentioned that, because you're literally saying you have to know your customer. And for us to have known our customer back then was virtually impossible, because again, something like this has never been attempted before. So what I knew for sure is that I am a pet owner, and I knew what level of, yeah, care my pet deserved at the time, wherever they came from or whatever kind of pet they are. So yeah, it's just important, not only that you're agile, but we were blessed by living in a place like UAE. So Petra, like you mentioned earlier, um, this landscape that we live in over here is very inviting to startups. There is a lot of government initiatives that are helping, female founders, male founders to take that leap of faith, right? And there are grants actually at the moment, let alone all the incubators, accelerators that are kind of funded by the government. There are a few big names. Hub 71 is a really, really big one in Abu Dhabi, and a lot of success stories happen there. They actually are able to adopt the vision. Now, I didn't go down this path, not because I didn't want to. I think maybe I just didn't need to at the time. Now,
Yeah.
looking back, if I could go back and change my mind, I would 100% do so. And, having legal that early on in your journey is super important. Having office space, things like that, which, in the end, it didn't really occur to me. I was like, okay, yeah, let's go work. And later understood that this would have been very, very beneficial to me. So I would 100% advise any startup coming here in the region, especially if they're launching a UAE-born company startup, that they would go down the accelerator incubator route, because yeah, you'd just be miles ahead of anybody else in the game. We didn't have any competition. We still did okay.
Yeah. Taking advantage of these programs is so important, and understanding what your options are as an entrepreneur is so important in the market that you're in. And then taking that leap of faith and actually using the resources that are available. There's some people who look at it and might think, Berke, we don't need it. Berke, hala, it's too soon. Berke, I can take care of it on my own in the beginning. بحس انه مش غلط for you to ask for help as an entrepreneur. You have to be comfortable with that, and you have to take help from wherever you can get it. Of course, بمنطق يعني, بس انه you making sure that you're optimizing all of the resources that are available to you and making sure that you're actually taking full advantage of it is so important. You said something before, and you said, you went down the route after, putting up the money up front and just kind of like doing it, you and your co-founder, you tapped into friends and family for funding. I always think that that's a very interesting way of doing things, and we have a lot of friends in the region who do well for themselves, work a 9 to 5, and want to invest their money into good initiatives. And this is a great one. I'd love to understand, like, how did you navigate that? استحيت. في ناس بيستحوا, right? Like
Hey.
they don't want to take that step. How did you go about it?
Yeah, so just to answer your first question, you cannot be afraid. When you
Yeah.
have a startup, you cannot have fear. That word needs to get out. I mean, I know it's hard and it's easier
Yeah.
said than done, but there can't be any fear. You just need to go and not be afraid to ask for help, because you need it. And the most likely people that are going to help you are your family and friends. Why? Because they know you, right? You don't have to pitch them on who you are, where you came from, what have you done in your life. They know who you are. They knew that I had worked for 9 years in NAPCO. They knew I had 5 years of sales experience prior to that. They knew that I, went through an education process. They knew my personality was, more outgoing, extroverted. So it kind of fit the part. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things that you should know when you are actually raising from family and friends, and why it's so important. It's more forgiving, and also there is not a lot of compliance with it, right? So not many people ask too many questions, especially when like 200, 300,000 is coming into your bank. You know, if it's institutional, then there are question marks. If it's a larger sum, then there are question marks. So, yeah, that's why family and friends, more forgiving. Don't be afraid. Again, these are the people that are going to help you. If you want a leap of faith, they're the ones that are going to believe you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was very, very clear to me. It wasn't easy, to be honest. I still had to be very convincing, have a proper pitch deck. You had to do the research, make sure that you knew the numbers, you knew all the questions to any of the answers. It's very, very important that you just know your stuff, right? One simple example is that if you look at any sales job in the world, right? In my opinion, yeah, people can be born with that ability to sell, right? I believe I have that, for example, but it's not a deal breaker, because I know that if you know your product well, you'll be able to sell it. So just know your product, know what you're doing, and know your customer. That is it.
And be your customer. Like, I think it's so important for
Yeah.
you to actually step into your customers' feet and really like live their experience as like how you would want them to experience your app, for example. So مثل ما أنت قلت إنه the fact that you're a pet owner, you understood like what you would want, like what are the expectations you would have for your pet if you were giving him to a stranger to watch for a few days. You know what I mean? Like that's هيدا شيء كتير مهم, is genuinely like understanding your audience and making sure that you're fully catering to what they need and solving, like you said, like a gap in the market is really, really interesting. I have a question for you. Diana, كتير إنه هلا I always think of like entrepreneurs. Yada's like, just take the mic. I always think of entrepreneurs and I'm just like, it's so hard nowadays. بتحس إنه there's almost like everything you can imagine is at your fingertips, especially in a market like Dubai. So it's hard to like crack into something that's completely untouched. Akid, there's something out there that we don't know that is untouched. But I feel like even for you, like you tapped into a market that you knew, a need that you knew existed. What kind of advice can you give someone who wants to take that leap of faith but is like nervous because maybe it's something that exists, like you said, in the market, you know?
Yeah, if you're coming into a market, let's just say that's extremely competitive, the competitive landscape would require you to have some sort of a USP. So that's something that I would advise. And, market the differences. It's important that that happens. Now, obviously, you do not want to go into a market that's extremely competitive anyway. I think that's a risky move for your business. So doing the research ahead of time and maybe making an adjustment, to that, which is maybe more innovative, right? Something that is a little bit outside the box, maybe in the same realm, but outside the box. And I mean, for example, for a long time, we wanted to launch dog training, okay? Which is going to be very, very similar, gig economy style, dog trainers that exist in the market that want to make some extra money and people can book them for their services.
Yeah.
Then we thought, let's do a bit of research first before we actually dwell on this, right? And then we realized that there's too much competition here. There's just too much competition, and the way it works is a little bit different. So, how do we still do this, make some revenue, and still fall in line with the dog training? The answer was video calling and training the pet parents to be able to train their dogs.
Oh,
You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
definitely slightly outside the box. I'm still in the same realm as dog training, but it's less competitive. It's something innovative and more people can afford it, right? So that's something that we are looking into at the moment. We're still doing the R&D for it to make sure, that it's something that we want to go down. But yeah, a video call will cost, X amount for 20 minutes of how to use the lead, right? What are some tips? And they can
Okay.
then take these tips and then have a follow-up call, see how the improvement went, and so on.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have mom get on one of those calls so that she can help train Honey.
Yeah, I think
Honey,
the
your
last
dog is
thing
now
mom
10
wants.
years old,
Oh,
I think.
Habibi. Bless her.
Yeah, you can't
Bless her.
teach an old dog new tricks, yet, Rouge. But also, I don't think that's what Maha's trying to do in her spare
No,
time,
she's
anyways.
really not trying to do that. She's like, خلاص, and to deal with Honey on your own time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's about to send her to Dubai عشوائي إذا بتقولي لها هيك. But I think what's cool about what Joey's saying is like, and the example that you gave is like, you really like are showing and proving how important it is to عن جد peel every layer of the onion or the industry that you want to go into and really understand يعني معقول يكون في this little one tiny gap or this one little thing that already exists but you can do a little bit better. So it's about like making sure you really genuinely know what you're going into وعن جد and educating yourself and continuing to just stay curious and stay on top of it.
I think
Something that
one
like
thing that I learned from Joey talking today about this, and I've heard this. Of course, I've heard the conversation about PetBae. I've heard his steps and everything. But one thing that I learned today is really get into it. Just get into it. Don't be so scared. Get into the business. You can learn as you go, and you can progress, or you can shift and make things better when you're on the job. But what are some other things that you would advise people, especially people that are still in corporate, thinking about doing their own thing, but afraid to take that next step?
My advisors are the reason why I've come this far. Okay.
okay.
So, and I had some good advisors. I think that is, it's really surrounding yourself with people that have more experience than you, that are smarter than you, even though you don't want to admit it. But yeah, people who just are better at what they do specifically. So categorically, I was like, okay, finance, who do we bring in?
Okay. Yeah.
Marketing, who do we bring in? And again, I did an exchange in equity early on with these advisors just to hook them and get them excited about it. So that's what I would advise is super important to not be afraid. Go get your advisors, give them a bit of equity because you need the money, right? In the beginning. So you can give away equity in the beginning. Try to hook some people that are very, very smart, that can help you, that you can bounce ideas off each other. Again, this is a recipe for a lonely road. Generally speaking, you're not in an office, you don't have staff, you don't have HR, everything is on you. You literally have to now be the HR, the daddy, the mommy, so it's just one of those things where you have no room for fear. One thing I would say is that if you're going to leave your corporate job, you're going to have to know that this is a risk, right? But it's a risk that has been calculated. You have enough money in the bank to sustain you for X number of months until you are able to your business is able to make more money, for example, or you're able to raise money. And yeah, look, know your product, know your consumer, make sure that this is your third baby if you have another two already. For example, I don't have any kids, so this is my only baby at the moment. But yeah, look, you live and breathe it, and keep going. I think that's another really important thing is keep going. Like there is a number of times I sort of was like, I need to stop, or I just felt that I was being suffocated or that I was being consumed by this never ending loop of me having to raise or not meeting targets or things like that. But you just got to keep going. The issues that you find, you just have to challenge yourself into fixing them quickly. Once they're fixed, you're going to face more issues, but at that point, you're going to be more experienced and more comfortable about facing them. And I think, look, just to go back onto the fundraising part, you're always fundraising. And that's something that I learned the hard way. I had recently raised money, but after receiving the confirmation, it took a long time, and it's still taking a long time for it to materialize or for the transfer to come through, whatever you want to call it. So these things and delays with these things happen all the time. You have absolutely no control over it. You never know when someone could get busy, the markets can change, the economies can, adjust. So it's very important that you're constantly fundraising, and you're not waiting until the last second. Think about your seed, think about your pre-seed, your Series A, your Series B ahead of time. Who could possibly be your investors? The UAE have a lot of VCs, so that's another thing I would do is just look at these big VCs that are here and look at the success stories with them. Look at all these startups that have gained funding and now are millions of dollars in valuations. So yeah, I just think that follow the value, stay true to who you are and to your brand, and things will work out. This is a very good example of the right place at the right time. The UAE right now is a very, very good place for startups. And so I would say if they wanted to, take that leap of faith, it's a great place to do it.
We've seen Amjad how much the UAE is supporting entrepreneurs. Amjad and Shabuba alone, and for the government, like they're really attracting talent from all over the world. And I think it's beautiful what they've done for the region so far and how they've really put Dubai on the map. So it's really cool to see what Dubai has been doing. Joey, thank you so much, Amjad, for sharing your journey with us. We are going to be having a part two because Joey has a lot more things up his sleeve that are coming up soon.
That's right.
So you will not,
We
yeah,
wanna
this
tell
is not the
everyone
last
about
time you're going
Yeah,
to see Joey.
exactly. I won't keep it a secret, that's for sure.
Yes, he won't. So we're super excited. He's going to be sharing a lot more insights from that specific journey. Wink, wink. We can't talk too much about it just yet, but
Stay tuned. It's very interesting.
stay
Honestly, everything they're
tuned.
doing is interesting. Imagine how far they've come the past 3 years. I mean, you have a lot more.
Yes, yes. I'm
Yes.
super excited to tell you guys some more. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to be like noticed and also to talk about these things to, shed some light and hopefully help people and be somewhat inspirational. I hope I can do that.
That's 100% what
Exactly.
you're doing. I think a lot of our listeners are going to find this so interesting and they're going to
Yeah.
learn a lot because I think a lot of people always think about doing something, but they're always scared of it. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
you saying everything that you just said and the journey, even though it's not easy, is a great way of putting it out for everybody. So thank you so
Cool.
much,
Most
Joey.
welcome. Most
Yeah.
welcome. Anytime. Thank you guys.
I
Shout out
think
to
like
PetBae, guys. If you don't know it, check it out.
everything you need for your pet sitting services in
PetBae is one
Dubai.
word. Airbnb for pets.
I love that.
Airbnb for pets.
I
There we
love
go.
that.
There you go.
Good job, Joey.
That's good, right?
It is. It is.
How do you describe us in 3 words? That's it,
I love
Just
that.
for a
That's great.
slightly deeper explanation, PetBae is a pet sitting platform that connects experienced pet lovers with people who are looking for care.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple.
We love that. And we love highlighting on Can We Discuss stories of people, like everyday people like us who are accessible, who have gone through challenges but really pushed through and made a name out of themselves. Like you said, Joey, you're making a big difference in people's everyday lives. And I think that that's really beautiful. So thank you again
Amazing.
for
Don't worry.
coming and
Thank
chatting
you
with
for
us
being one of the
today.
success stories.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. Still a little hot here. Just let me
So,
know.
yeah. Please make sure to drop all of your comments below and ask any questions that you have for Joey. Keep them in the comments and we'll get back to you. Make sure to tune in right back here in 2 weeks for another episode of Can We Discuss with Yara and Petra.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.